We go. Good morning, everyone.
Oh,
Hi, Fred.
hi
Good to
there.
see you.
Nice to see you.
Fred, I was searching for your email and I have it somewhere, but since you're here, do you think you could pop it in the chat for me?
Sure.
I'm interested to know if you'd like to do a class with me on San Miguel de Allende and on the painter you did,
Diego Rivera.
Diego Rivera.
Okay.
I thought that'd be a great idea.
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay. Hi, Bruce and
Hi,
Sue.
Russ.
Great to see you all today.
I'm going to go blank in a little bit so I can take the banana bread out of the oven.
I was just eating some granola, so I was blank for a second. Thanks, Fred. I had it somewhere, but I just now realized I may not have found it because your name isn't in the email.
Yeah,
That's just fine.
And also, when you send it to me, then I'll have yours.
Very good. Very good. We'll connect. I think it'd be a great program. I'm really, really enjoying the classes we've been doing on Mexico. There's at least one person coming to the class who said she wanted to learn all she could about traveling because she wants to travel. And she said, the first place I want to go is Mexico. And I said, great. That's a fabulous way to do your first international travel.
Yep. Yeah, it's close by.
And she's from Houston. And I think, a lot of the international
lot
flights
of
go
flight,
through
yeah.
Houston. So
That's right. A lot of
Mexico.
flights in Mexico go through Houston. Exactly. Yep. Yeah.
Let's see, Max. We have Max here as a TA, and he is also now our co-host. There you go, Max. Glad to have you here. Hi, Nikki. Hi, Cease and Danya and Susanna. I have someone who's just named iPhone. If you wouldn't mind giving us your name, or I can rename you, or you can rename you if you know how to rename yourself in Zoom. Isn't it great? All the baby boomers in America now know how to rename themselves in Zoom.
How do I rename it permanently? Because every time I join a thing, I have to rename myself.
I think you have to do that with your. Go ahead, Russ. I'm sorry.
You had it, Fred. You have to go into your account and just give your name in the account.
Into which account? My Zoom account?
Your Zoom account. And
Okay.
you do that by going under Zoom US. I'm looking in a Mac, so I see the Zoom US in the upper left-hand corner and go into your preferences. I think you do it there. Sometimes you have to do this on the web at Zoom.
Oh, you mean you're talking about a phone?
If you're in your phone or your laptop, you should have a way to get into the preferences.
I have a desktop, but yeah.
The desktop should work easier.
So zoom.us?
Well, I think if you go into, I'm pretty sure if, I'll tell you right now, if I go into my preferences, I'll check mine out.
Oh, let me see.
I think you're going to have to go into your zoom.us account to do it.
Yeah, I think so. Profile,
app,
probably.
Either the computer app or the phone app won't give you that option. Hey, Christine is here. I was hoping you'd come, Christine. I'm going to plug you for a few questions.
I'm in Paris.
I know. Don't we wish we were in Paris?
Wow.
That's not fair.
Wow.
I can at least
I'm in
pretend I'm
Italy.
in Paris.
If Fred's in Italy, that looks like what city is that? I can tell by the mountain and the hilltop town.
You know, I forget the name of it. It's about I haven't been there actually. 60 miles northwest of Venice, kind of in the foothills of the Dolomites.
Okay.
I'm at the Grand Canyon. Not really. Not now. I mean, I took the picture though.
You know,
Good
I'm
job.
doing a class tomorrow. In fact, let me get my calendar out for the time.
I did this during your class.
It's a class tomorrow called.
But I did that during your class, actually.
I think it's tomorrow at 4. Or is when can we travel? Where we're going to talk about traveling, and as I teach these classes, I've never met so many people or read about so many people in the news who are just itching to travel or on Facebook travel groups. And I keep telling people, if you come to my class tomorrow, you hear this little anecdote. Let's not make travel post-pandemic like getting toilet paper pre-pandemic, when suddenly everyone's stampeded. And just relax. Those places aren't going anywhere. Italy's still going to be there. Paris is still going to be there. And you'll get there. And I realize it's easy for me to say that because I've been to Italy and Paris, so I get it. But I'm going to guess that a lot of the folks here are travelers. Sue, what were you going to say?
Well, I've just been trying to make reservations for a kind of a loop trip in New England, since that's the only part of the country I haven't been to, and hotels are filling up fast. So
Yes.
People are really getting out there fast.
People are itching to travel. And actually, in June, I'm going to be talking a lot about traveling in the U.S. because I want people to think about where they can go. And should I say, I can go without a doubt, pretty much. I mean, I don't think once the U.S. opens for travel inside the country, we're not going to suddenly clamp down. I went to Maine last summer. That's part of New England. And I technically had to quarantine for 2 weeks when I went there. In fact, I did. I just went to see my son and daughter-in-law and grandson with my wife. So we were effectively quarantined. But I think travel within the U.S. is going to be pretty easy. And I'm really recommending people to do that. A lot of folks, got out and saw things in their local environs last year they didn't know were there. There's an old saying that it takes the tourists coming into your neighborhood to discover the things you didn't see. I think I lived about 13 years on old Route 40 in Western Pennsylvania. It's the old national route that went from Washington to Illinois. It's the first national highway. And there was a place it was Braddock's grave. So where General Braddock from the French Indian War was buried. Lived there 13 years. I never stopped and looked at the monument. But then we would have people come by and visit and they say, I stopped today, look at Braddock's grave. Have you ever been there? I'd say, embarrassingly, no, I've never been there. Well, great to have you all with us. This class this afternoon is going to be largely discussion. And I have a hunch I have some solo travelers here. In fact, I know I have at least one. Yes. And I'm going to ask Christine later to tell us a bit about how you took a tour with Rick Steves and that got you all set to then take your own solo trip to Paris. So we're going to come back to that one, Christine. Be ready. And I'll tell you a little bit of my own travel experiences. I will share a bit about some of the things you need to know. But before we start, now, let me get a show of hands. If you're an experienced solo traveler, raise your hand. Okay, Christine, Fred, Bruce, Susanna, Cease, and the ones who aren't on screen, go ahead and raise your virtual hand. Well, you pretty much all are, so mostly are, not all. And a few more people will join us along the way. So feel free today to add your own thoughts and tips about solo travel. And maybe this will also help you sharpen some of your thinking, and maybe you'll get some new ideas about solo travel. So anyway, glad to have everybody here. Please put questions in the chat. And Nikki has already put in that she is from Roseville, California. Thanks, Nikki, for being with us. I've seen Nikki in some other classes. I'm great to see some new faces, plenty of familiar faces. But I do a lot of travel classes and I'm really having fun. Though I got to say one thing, it's really giving me a bad itch to travel. And it gets worse every time I think I do a class about international travel, because that's where I've really loved to travel. And sort of this urge to do it all right now, but I'm not. So welcome, everybody. I'm going to share my screen with you.
Oops.
You should see something that says traveling solo. And the first time I did this class, I had a couple of guests, some learners, Randy Dykheis and Regina Porter. Randy joined us for the second time we did it, and I've done it a couple times solo myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm your guide, Russ Eanes from Harrisonburg, Virginia. And if you ever are traveling down Interstate 81 through the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. Harrisonburg is right on Interstate 81. We call ourselves Mid-Valley. About an hour south of Winchester, about an hour and a half south of the Potomac River. Lovely place, and today is a lovely day here. There's a lot to see. On the west side of the Shenandoah Valley, where I live, are the Allegheny Mountains, and on the east side is the Blue Ridge. And if anyone is looking for a place to travel and you're anywhere near here this summer, a fabulous site is Skyline Drive. Pick it up in Front Royal, Virginia. It goes about 100 miles down to the Big Rockfish Gap. And there it becomes the Blue Ridge Parkway, and that goes all the way down to North Carolina. And it has fabulous overlooks. There are two really neat places to stay along there. They built some lodges back in the Depression. And Public Works, the Conservation Corps, Civilian Conservation Corps built them. And they're beautiful. They have been renovated, and they're really nice places. So consider that a place to stay. You can only drive, I think, 35 miles an hour is a speed limit. And why would you want to drive faster? Because every mile or two, there's an overlook where you can pull over and look into the valleys. So I am personally an experienced traveler, and I also am a solo traveler. I'll share a bit about that today. I'm a writer, a walker, and a cyclist. Formerly was a book publisher. And I'm now a full-time guide with Get Set Up. Love all the energy I get working with older learners. You can request a recording after class. I think you know about that. You email help@getsetup.io. And if anyone is joining us by live stream today, and we are live streaming, the best way to participate is to join us and register for a class. Then you get to be here and ask questions in real time. Lastly, we're not paid to promote any specific products at Get Set Up. We're just an educational organization. I've done lots of solo trips. I used to have a job where I was required to travel almost once a month, often by plane. But that was generally in the U.S. and Canada. I went to Canada a lot for my job because I was a publisher for the Mennonite Church, and there's lots of Mennonites in the U.S. and Canada. And I love going to Canada. It's not all that different from the U.S. culturally. Beautiful place to go. My favorite place was British Columbia. Just lovely. But the longest solo trip I ever took was in 2018. Now, let me back up and say I like to travel with my wife. She's my favorite traveling companion. I have traveled with other members of the family. Some of my children, my sisters traveled with us. Some of us have traveled in groups. I really enjoyed that. But I had a dream to walk the Camino de Santiago, 500 miles by myself the whole way in 2018. My wife didn't want to take that much time off. I was gone for 6 weeks. She didn't want to be gone that long. She joined me at the end, but she blessed me and was happy for me to go by myself. So that was my longest solo travel. But I'd done other solo travel before. Outside of the country, I used to go to Frankfurt, Germany for work because that's where the world's largest book fair is. And also I traveled with some of my kids to the UK on more than one occasion, and stuck around and did a little hiking by myself. My job was pretty intense, and travel was a nice way for me to unwind. The same year that I walked the Camino de Santiago, I also took 3 weeks in the UK to bike what they call the end-to-end, Land's End to John O'Groats. Sometime I'm gonna have to do a class on that because it's a lot of fun. The picture I'm showing you here today is me on top of the Ibaneta Pass in the Pyrenees. Was a high point of my walk across the Camino de Santiago. It was my first day. It was a high point in height, but it was also a high point for me because I got over the Pyrenees in one day. And it's not as hard as it sounds. It was 25 kilometers, about 1,000 meters of climbing. But the point I want to make is just that I went to Spain by myself, so I went solo, but I met lots of people while I was walking the Camino, dozens and dozens, some of whom have become friends, probably lifelong friends since then. So there's many things you can experience as a solo traveler, and those of you who are solo travelers, and we've got quite a few, will know that. For my work, because I went to Germany, I always tacked on a little extra time to experience something that maybe my wife wouldn't want to experience. She went with me one of the times to Frankfurt. We spent a few days in Munich. But the first time I went to the Frankfurt Book Fair, I said, I want to go see something old. My wife isn't as interested in ruins or ancient churches or things as I am. And I started stumbling on my trips through Europe. I started stumbling on the Romans everywhere. The Romans were in Britain. The Romans were in Spain. The Romans were in Germany. They were everywhere. This is a Roman Colosseum, kind of like a little Colosseum theater in the round in Trier, Germany. I found out at some point that Trier, which is on the Mosel River, was at one point kind of the where the emperor lived. Very briefly, Constantine was crowned emperor here, and was one of the big far outposts of the Roman emperor. There's Roman ruins in Paris. You find Roman ruins everywhere. So I kind of make it my mission to discover Roman ruins. Trier has quite a few. Besides this little Colosseum, they also have an enormous. There's a basilica there, and the whole base of it was once a Roman building. At the time, I think it had been the largest roofed building in the Roman Empire. And there's also some other buildings which were repurposed over the centuries that were built by the Romans, and they're still there. So I thought I had to just see that. There's also a bath. The Romans love to build baths wherever they went, including the town in England we all call Bath, or as they say, Bath. And that's one of the most famous places you can go to see a Roman bath. But so this was a way I got to see something and didn't bother my wife, because she didn't go with me to Germany on business, so I could tack on a few extra days by myself. When I travel solo, I pretty much use mass transit. That's because, two reasons. One, it's hard to drive in a country you don't know and navigate at the same time. Now, you can use a GPS that's newer since I started doing some solo travel. GPS was new and expensive to put in your car. I thought I could use maps. I was wrong. You really do need a GPS if you're going to drive. However, there are some countries I would never drive in alone. I would never drive in England by myself. Why? You're on the other side of the road. It's sheer terror. And the terror isn't driving on the other side of the roads. The terror is the roundabouts. Americans don't have a clue how to drive in roundabouts, but all the Brits do. So you arrive at a roundabout and you're wondering what to do next, and everybody whizzes past you because they know what they're doing. And you're on the other side of the road. And they often drive stick shift cars. You have to pay extra to get an automatic transmission. So years ago, I just started using mass transit. And the bonus of not being able to, not having to focus on the driving, is you could focus on the scenery. So that is one thing I mentioned about people when you travel solo, is you do need to think about things about how I'm going to get from one place to another. And I sure advise that you use mass transit. Now, let me just talk about some of the things about traveling. And this might be where some of you can chime in, because these are the kinds of questions that folks who are thinking about doing solo travel want to ask. So, for example, they ask, how do you plan your own travel? Now, I'm going to do a class coming up in June called How to Plan for Your Own International Trip, something like that, which could be you could be doing it for yourself, for a group, for you and a spouse, whatever. But I find that I enjoy planning travel. I like discovering places. I like figuring out where to stay, how to get there, what to do when I'm there. I have a shelf full of guidebooks. Some of them I have used. Many of them I've used. Many of them I haven't used. I'm planning to go to someplace someday. I pick up guidebooks at secondhand bookstores for $1 or $2. I have some Rick Steves books, but my favorite guidebooks actually are the DK guidebooks, if you know them, Dorley and Kinderly. They, yes, I see Christine putting up her thumb. They're lovely because they are color. And while there are some things about guidebooks that get dated, like times things are open or hotels that are available or the cost of things, the history of a place never changes. So I like those DK guides because of the history they show about someplace and the photos, and they're really good. So I have a shelf full of them. So if I'm thinking next year I want to go to Provence, I actually have a travel guide, maybe even 2, to Provence. I'll pull off the shelf to start with my own travel planning. Some people plan a different way. They say, I've got this much money and hey, there's a cheap flight to blank. I think I'll go there. That's also a way to do it. But many of us dream of places they go to go. And I got more places that I dream of going probably than I can get to in my life. And that's okay. But I started dreaming about traveling when I was a kid. For me, it came out of my father. Now, he traveled also for work, but in the 1960s, when I was a youngster, he went to Europe 3 times for business, and he would send home postcards. And one time he took his camera and he brought home and he took slides, and he would show us the slides every year of the ruins in Rome or someplace like that. And I was fascinated by it. And so I got the itch when I was a kid to start traveling. I had a big map of the world on my wall. Never went abroad until I was in my 40s. Went to England, and within about 10 days, got as much of my pent-up demand of what I wanted to see in England as I could. But I still remember, for me, standing by the Tower of London, that little part of London, which is still in existence, and looking at the tower and having read a lot about the history of Henry VIII and such, and realizing this was an old place that's full of history, but was astounded to see a little sign that said Roman ruins or something like that. And I realized it was the ruins of a wall that the Romans had built. And I just stood there and stared at it for a while and thought, that thing's almost 2,000 years old. I've never seen anything in America constructed that's 2,000 years old. We do have things in America that are older than that, or at least very old, that predate the Europeans, but that's connected to history that I can read about. So that's where that itch to go travel. And so I went back to the UK in 2008 and went back in 2012, and then was there in 2016 and was there in 2017 and 2018. So I've been to the UK and Scotland and Ireland quite a few times, as well as Germany, France, Switzerland, Italy, Spain, and I've been twice to Colombia. And have only been over the border once to Mexico, and that's where I'm planning to go next, but not traveling solo. First, so anybody out here who's a solo traveler can share about how you plan your solo travel or planned a solo travel trip that you go. And you raise your hand, Fred.
Well, one of the things that I do now, maybe not so much in the past because I've traveled a lot, is I try and focus on one city. I've been going to Barcelona quite a bit in the last few years. I've spent extended periods of time there. So it makes it a lot easier because obviously you just go there and you don't have to worry about how am I going to ride the train from Paris to blah, blah, because you're just in this one town. And you'll find, I think you get to see a lot more. You kind of get a feel for the culture. I mean, I have a joke of myself. I say, I stay at a place until the local coffee shop person knows what I drink. And they, oh, Fred, you're a double cappuccino. And I said, well, it's time for me to move on. I've been here too long. But I mean, maybe even initially that might be a way to go. The temptation is, oh, I just want to go see. Because I've had some of my grandchildren do that. Yeah, in a week they went to, I don't know, 5 major cities or something. Spent most of their time probably in the airport or on a train or something. So yeah, even for first time maybe travelers, that maybe is not a bad idea. Pick a city and research it, and then do Airbnb or something. Get yourself a place, and nowadays you can look up. If you're looking at Airbnb, they kind of tell you where you are. You get a little idea what part of town you're going to be in. And before you get there, you can even do Street View in Google. You can walk up and down the street I'm going to go stay there. Oh, I'll go down there. Oh, yeah, there's a pizza parlor there. And across the street's a Japanese restaurant. Kind of get a little feel for what your new neighborhood's going to be like.
That's a great suggestion. And I know when we come to Christine, she's going to talk about Paris. And that's something I talk about in slow travel, is staying in one place. And I had a similar experience, Fred. Because I went to Frankfurt for work, I went 3 years in a row. And what I loved about it was when I arrived the second year, I knew exactly which train to get on, which subway to get on, how long it would take me. I knew the coffee shop like you. that I went into. In that case, it was a bakery. German bakeries are heaven.
Oh,
And I knew which place to go to, how far it would take me. And each year I branched out, and I was there for work. So I went to the festival center, but I had extra time. I knew the center of downtown. I knew the shops, and I developed some little patterns. I knew the restaurants I like to go to. And then every year I branched out into some different things. One time, I think the last time I was there by myself, I walked all the way from where I was staying to the center of town. It was probably 2.5 miles, maybe 3 miles that I'd taken the subway before, but it was great just walking through the neighborhoods. So I really like that idea, Fred. Yeah, if you go back to one place, it seems like it might be boring, but not. And also, if you get to know a place and you're in a city, doesn't have to be a big city, but a city with transit stops, you can also go out and explore other places more easily, because let's say you're in Europe, they have got fast trains or buses that go places frequently, and the trains can be fast. And so, like we spent a week in York, my wife and I, in 2016. And after we'd explored pretty much all of York in 3 days, we went up to Durham for a day, and then we went over to the coast of Whitby for a day, and we just got to know different sections. So that's a great idea. Also, when you're traveling solo, it can take a little bit of a time to kind of orient yourself. What neighborhood am I in? How safe does it seem? Where are the places to go? And you can get to know a local. And because if you're moving every day or two to a new place, you're having to pack up, move on, figure out new stuff. So if you're in one place, you kind of get your feet a little more solid.
I traveled to Sweden with my daughter to see our relatives. But since we were going to Sweden, we also went to Denmark. We got Denmark first, then Sweden, then Norway. And we had relatives, and we were very lucky to plan a Saturday for my grandmother's side of the family and a Sunday for my grandfather's side of the family. And so our relatives set up a time when all the family got together. It was wonderful. And then my son, Brenda's twin brother, also went with his family to Sweden and Germany and other places like a couple of years after that. So more of the young people showed up for him, which was fine. But it makes a difference. One of my cousin's husband is into genealogy. So he had set up all these relatives on my Swedish side of the family. I'm also German, but I have no idea where relatives would be in Germany. But ahead of time, we did contact, or I should say, all these relatives and set it up. So we also went to see the Northern Lights in the upper northern part of Sweden, and that happened to be just the right time of year that we went. So we actually planned it around the Northern Lights, actually.
Wow, that sounds interesting.
It was really wonderful. It's the only time I've gone to a different country.
Let's see, Susanna and Bruce, and then Susanna. You unmute, Bruce.
I'm not into trip planning, so I've gone by myself. I've gone on road scholar trips by myself. And I sort of like the structure, although moving from place to place can really wear you out. You could really be tired. Sometimes I've been on trips where they move too much. It tires you out.
That's a good suggestion, Bruce. I'm actually hoping to have a presentation by Road Scholars this summer. I've also been a guide for Road Scholars, so I really think highly of Road Scholars.
Okay.
Susanna.
Okay, when I travel alone, I usually first contact the travel bureau of all the places that I'm going to go and find out all the tours. And because I am a woman, I travel alone. I don't want to lose time taking buses or something like that. I book all the tours available, all of them. And I save time and they explain to you everything because they are guys specialized on selling their country. And I have a good time. And then after the tour, maybe you invite them and they join you for dinner or something like that, and you make friends. And then in hotels, I try to book on the lowest floors close to the elevator. This is one, I mean, this is safe to be close to the elevator. And then it's fun, I mean, but you have to contact the travel bureau. They gave you all the points that they are very interesting to visit, and you save time. That's my experience. I went 2 years ago, I went all the south of France until Morocco, and every city I have a tour.
Very
I mean,
good.
it was a little costly. I mean, it was a little, but I learned a lot in 3 weeks.
Very good.
Yeah.
Nikki.
Thanks, Russ. I have a question for the solo travelers. I'm a very social person, and I'm recently widowed, so my last traveling abroad was with my husband. And you meet people along the way, but as a solo traveler, if you really go by yourself and you don't go, on a tour, like I was considering going on one of Rick Steves' tours by myself the first time. But as a solo traveler, and you're pretty social, it's that eating alone, looking at things by yourself, and enjoying what's around you. But how do you cope with that? That's something that I'm really hesitant in trying, and really being solo and not being on a tour. So that's something I'd like to know from some of the solo travelers.
Good. I've got Christine, Bruce, and Fred, who all have got an answer for you. Start with Fred.
Well, another option to consider is what we call hospitality organizations. And I can put a couple or 2 or 3 in the chat before we end. There's an organization called Servas, SERVAS, US.org. There's another one called Couchsurfing. And there's another one called Be Welcome. Those are 3 major ones. And these are people who host people in their homes for no charge. There's no fee involved. It's a person-to-person kind of a thing. And I've traveled a lot, especially in my younger days with Servas. I met so many great people. My oldest best friend I met when I was a host, and she and friends came and stayed with me. And we've been friends for like 40, 45 years or something. So I would look into that, because that's a way to, first you stay with a local, and they know the way around. And these are people who want to host, are looking for people. Sometimes Airbnb, it's just, economics. They just, it's a sideline. But when people are hosting you for free, they ought to really be interested in meeting new people. Otherwise they wouldn't, be doing it. Also, some of these organizations, Couchsurfing in particular, has what's called meetups. So if you remember Couchsurfer and you go to Barcelona, you can go to the website there and say, I'm in Barcelona. Is there anything going on? Or it'll be, listen, we're going to have a meetup down by the beach on blah, blah, blah. And you go down there and there's 20 people from all over the world. They're all sitting around and go to the bar and have a drink. So that would be my suggestion.
Those are great suggestions, Fred. Yeah, put those in the chat. I'll make sure they get in the notes. Those are great ideas. I got Bruce and Carmen still, and Christine. We'll let you follow up with that. But I really like what Fred said, because it's taking the initiative to get to know other people. And yet another option, if you're someone that's on Facebook, there are billions, as I'm exaggerating, lots and lots of Facebook travel groups. I know, because I'm a part of maybe 20 or 30. I have no idea. I've stopped counting. And you can tell, like when I went to Italy to walk with my wife, we said, we're going to be starting here and we're going to walk to there. And these are our dates. Bunch of people contacted us, said, we're going to be there at the same time. Let's meet up. And we did. Bruce.
I just wanted to say that if you go on a Road Scholar tour, you generally get 3 meals a day and you're eating with the other travelers. You don't really eat alone. always can join people at a table. It's never a problem. If you want to sit by yourself, that's up to you. The only thing is it's mostly couples. I'm single, so I think in the future, if I'd like to, maybe there are tours for single people, and I think I'd be more comfortable with that.
Good. Yep. That's a good suggestion. Carmen. You're muted.
Hi, I'm at my volunteer job. So, but I wanted to say that I traveled by myself for the last, I would say 10 years. And the important thing is not to think what it would be if I was with someone. Just enjoy the ride and have fun even eating by yourself.
Yes.
Also, I use a guide, especially the ones that have maps, leader maps with routes. So when I went to Barcelona, I used the guide and I chose the places I wanted to go, and I just went by public transportation. The guides are excellent in that they give you even the bus routes and all. And if you go, like someone said, to the same coffee shop every day, you're likely to meet people and people will know you and kind of be nice to you. So, traveling by myself is exciting. And I'm going to hopefully to Paris next Wednesday.
Wow.
No, the other one. Hopefully, because I'm still not sure about the restrictions.
Very good.
So, and also, I just thought about it. If you put in the internet, you look for the transport from the airport to where you're going, you're likely to find non-expensive ways of getting there safely. So the last time I went to Paris, I had the right set up when I was in Puerto Rico. So I had a good time and I was safe. And if you can share safety tips to Mexico, that's a place I would like to go. But from the news, I find that it's not good for female solo travelers. It's not that safe for females by themselves.
Thanks for your ideas. And we've got lots of great ideas that have been put out here so far. And Nikki, I certainly can understand your situation. Same circumstance my sister's in. My sister's retired. She's now got money and time to travel. And my brother-in-law is not living. He died some years back, and she would love to travel with him. Christine had an interesting experience. I'm going to have her share about how she took a Rick Steves tour by herself and then went back to Paris.
Yeah, in 2009, my sister gave me for my 60th birthday airfare to Paris because I'd wanted to go my whole life. And I booked Rick's 7 days in Paris. So I gave myself actually 10 days. So that I'm glad I did. I highly recommend to give yourself at least a day or two before and after the tour starts to get acclimated, get through the jet lag. The group officially met. We were all in the same hotel. There were 24 of us from all over the United States. And Nikki, as a single person going, what was great, all the people were very friendly, very nice. And there were also other single people. Most were couples, but there were single people. And we could eat breakfast in the hotel if we chose, because that was provided. So therefore you would eat very small. It was a small hotel, lovely, But so the dining room was small, so it was very easy to eat with people, and people were very accommodating and very kind because we were basically all in this situation as tourists. And then the tours were usually a half a day, sometimes a full day. So we were all together. We could be on our own, the breaks for lunch, and typically people either wanted to share or people just wanted to go out on their own just to do tour, just to do their own sightseeing. We had 3 dinners as part of the tour that were arranged for us, which were, of course, some of the best food I've ever eaten. So I would say it was very easy to meet people because we were all Americans, so we all spoke English, which was great. And people were just accommodating. Our guide assigned to our tour for the 7 days stayed in the hotel. He was very kind. His English was great. And if somebody had a dental emergency, he got a dentist for that person, and all of us still kept with the tour. So I was just very, very impressed. And then the next year, I went back by myself because of my 10 days there and feeling so comfortable with going around Paris and understanding it's a very easy city to get around. I walked mostly, but definitely took the subway. That was one of the first things they did on our first day, was teach us how to use the subways, show us how to do it. We did it with the guide. So on the whole, I can't recommend enough doing a tour for the first time of a city that you're not familiar with. And whether it's people from all over the world, but definitely people who are Americans, so you have someone for sure to speak English with. But it was great. I was a flight attendant, so I have traveled all over the United States. So that also involved a lot of time on my own, because yes, you go with a crew, but for the most part, when I landed in a city, I would do all I could to get around and see what was within my neighborhood. And I would highly recommend when you are solo traveling that you talk to the front desk, you talk to a concierge, and you find out whatever you're looking for in the neighborhood of your hotel to find out what they'd recommend for you. Besides, of course, the internet and tour guide books.
And the second time you went, how did you get your lodging?
So I stayed the first time on the left bank, very close to the Eiffel Tower. I love the hotel, but I wanted to look at a little bit less expensive. And so I actually got a hotel close to the Arc de Triomphe, and it was fine. And it was a little bit less expensive. I think I preferred the left bank neighborhood close to the Eiffel Tower better, but the neighborhood I was in was fine. It was full of wonderful, places to just pick up food, delis, below. So anyway, I just searched, and again, we're talking about 2010 when the internet wasn't as great as it is now. And so that's what I did. I searched on the internet to find the best price that I felt by looking at the pictures that it worked. And then also I got my museum pass, and I don't think I got the subway pass till I got there, but I think I did my museum pass in advance.
Going to come back to Nikki in a second, and also Sue. I do just want to make a comment here because when Christine was sharing, it reminded me of something that another learner in a different class had recommended, that I hope someday we can have a get set up group, social group. It can also be people that get together and maybe plan going as a group somewhere, a group that wants to go solo. It could be with couples too, but people are looking for traveling companions. You get to know each other. So that's an idea I've got on mind. So I've somewhere it gets set up. We have all your email addresses. So we'll reach out to you if you're interested. Sue, you had a comment or question first. You're muted.
Okay, hear me now?
Yes.
I haven't heard anybody mention river cruises. That's another really, I think that I didn't do it solo, but looking back on a river cruise, I think that it would be really a great way to go solo. You sit with other people in the dining room and you go on tours, away from the river. I did the two different French river tours, and I would do that again solo in a heartbeat.
Great.
I'd like to do the barge tour. I think that looks like a whole lot of fun.
Yes, I've heard about and I know people have done the barge tours. Fred, we'll get to you in 1 second. Let me get to Nikki.
Oh, thanks, Russ. I just wanted to thank everybody for sharing their information with me. I know, Christine, my husband and I, the very first time we went abroad, we went on a Rick Steves tour, and we learned so much from the guides and how to, be independent. And then after that, we didn't go on any more tours. We planned our own trips because of what we learned. And Rick's books were fantastic too. So I think that I've been given a lot of ideas, and through the river cruise is what we were going to do next abroad. But that's a great reminder for me. Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank everybody, Russ.
Oh, you're very welcome.
The Seine cruise, I did the Seine, and then one of the ones in the south of France, but I also did the Douro River in Portugal. And oh my goodness, that was so much fun because it was a wine tour.
Oh.
So we stopped all along the river at wineries and did wine tasting. And so that was very fun.
Great. Let's do Fred and then Carmen. Go ahead, Fred.
I want to mention, I'm not really a big organized tour person, but a friend of mine is, and she goes with Overseas Adventure Travel, it's called. And the one thing that she mentioned to me was there's no single supplement charge. So that's important for solo travelers, because usually most travel companies, you look at the price and then you find out, single, well, there's a supplemental fee. But apparently Overseas Adventure Travel, OAT Travel, I'll put it in the chat, does not charge a single supplements. That's important, I think.
That's very good. Excellent. We save a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fred. That's great information. I'm going to come to Carmen in 1 second. I'm just going to point out something in the chat. That Danya said she wished she'd known in the past about hiring a local guide, and we've seen that in several of Rick's videos. I know he's doing the Monday nights, and he does that every Monday night. But in some of our classes, we watch some of his, and several times he hires a local guide, and especially if you can get a group, several people together. Doesn't matter how many to the guide. The generally, I think these private guides are just for doing the guide, however much it is. I'm sure that several people can divide up the cost more efficiently. Carmen. Let's see. Did you have a question, Carmen, or a comment?
She's muted.
Either you're muted or maybe your hand's up by accident. Fred also mentioned OAT Travel. That's Overseas Adventure Travel. We do have coming up, by the way, in the next couple of weeks, we have Untours, which, I think she's presenting next week, and she'll be coming back again. So if anyone is interested in Untours, again, and yet a different way of doing travel. More comments or questions about planning travel. I know it's been said that, first of all, a lot of you have already answered the question, which is anticipated, which is how do you get to meet people? So if you pick meetups or different ways of getting to know folks that are traveling, that is a good way to get to know folks and to feel like you're not alone. I do know for myself, when I traveled solo, the one downside of it was when I saw something or experienced something particularly great, I didn't have anyone to share that with. So that is one downside of going by yourself. That is balanced by the upside, which is you can go somewhere and don't have to worry about whether or not someone else wants to go there. So my wife and I, 1 second, Carmen, I'll come right to you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We'll come right to you. Several years ago.
How to put my mic again.
Okay.
So go ahead and I'll wait for my turn.
Just 1 second. All I was going to say was a few years ago, my wife and I came to a piece about what to do when I want to spend an hour in a cathedral and she's seen all she wants to see in 5 minutes. She picks out other things she wants to do that maybe I don't want to do. She likes to browse shops more than I do. And we're like, hey, this is great. I'll be in here till 1 o'clock and you can go over there and look at the shops till 1 o'clock. Works out perfectly. Carmen, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No one has mentioned booking.com. It's where I found the best prices and the best settings. I usually get my 2 stars, 3 stars hotels with them, depending on what the rating is. I don't go lower because then it might not be safe for a female traveler. And also, when I started traveling, I saw Paris, Je t'aime, which is an American movie about Paris. And there's a solo traveler there who inspired me. It was a tour, and she said the same thing as you did. She said she saw all these wonderful sights, but when she turned, there was no one to share them with. So what I do is use my Facebook and share it with everyone who wants to look at tourist pictures. And and I've done the group travels. In Argentina, I found a guide, a private guide in a restaurant, and we went with her the whole day, and then she said that she might take us dancing. So we danced tango, and we spent a full day with the guy. It wasn't cheap, but it was fun. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. That's great input.
I wanted to say, somebody mentioned going to Mexico. Was that you, Carmen? I think so. I went to Mexico. I was with a group though. I was with my step son and his family, and we were in a group. And in Mexico, they took a bus to where they have these outdoor shopping. But along the way, I would not have wanted to stop at any of these places that we went through in Mexico, if you know what I'm saying. You have to know really what is a good area of Mexico and where you really want to go to visit. And of course, watch out for food that's been washed with water.
Yes, thank you. You reminded me of something too, that I look in the internet for the advisories. Like in Barcelona, from Barcelona, there are a lot of advice from how to avoid getting mugged the tourist places. So you know what has happened. If you do that, you'll know what has happened to other people and try to avoid it. It doesn't mean that it won't, something else might not happen to you, but then if you can, you share it, and then other people know about what to be aware of. So
thanks, Carmen. Very
Thanks.
good point. One last question or suggestion. Fred, go ahead.
I'm just saying for sort of first timers, it's there's some real basic rules. First, you don't take any more money out during the day than you can intend on spending. You can have a little pouch. I have one that goes around my neck. I can put it underneath my shirt or my jacket, depending on where I am. You don't want to wear your Rolex watch and your $10,000 wedding ring and all that. So you just have to sort of dress down a little bit. You don't have to look like a bum, but you don't want to look like you're some real rich tourist. You don't want to flash a lot of money. I've seen people, they take a big wad of bills out that's wrapped with a rubber band around it. So don't flash money. You think that's obvious, but sometimes it's not. So those are some of the just normal day-to-day, precautions. You don't need to take 5 credit cards with you. If you're going to use it, take 1 credit card, that kind of stuff.
Very good point, Fred. I know I covered that. I'll come to you in 1 second, Sue. In my 10 travel tips, one, I do talk about getting money. And I said, never walk out of the ATM counting your cash. If a lot of countries, the ATM is in a more secluded spot. I mean, secluded, but I mean, people aren't right around you. But if they are, just discreetly get it and put it in your pocket right away. You can, I mean, you want to be able to have a sense that you got the right amount of money. Put it in your pocket. You can stick it in your wallet or whatever you want in a more discreet place, but don't walk away counting your bills. Sue, did you have a question or comment?
No, I just want to make a comment. I realize that I have really bad purse habits in the United States. I hook my purse over the edge of my chair. I put it on the floor beside me. You cannot do that in Europe or it'll walk away.
Yeah. And, you know, I've told people, I do have a 10 top travel tips class. That'll be Friday. One of my tips is like, don't take valuables with you. Don't take a lot of jewelry. I like what Fred said. Don't take your valuable Rolex watch with you. You're there to experience things, not to show off what you have. You've been a great group. I've really enjoyed this. I have several more classes on travel. There's one tonight on safe travel. So I'm glad we didn't talk about traveling safely today because we did talk about it a bit because we could talk about safe travel tonight. There's lots of questions and issues around safe travel. And yeah, there's a lot of tips we can all learn about traveling solo. One last thing I will say that, again, to bring back to this idea, like Fred and others have mentioned, if you can connect with other solo travelers while you're somewhere, those can become the people that you share those experiences with. And when I walked the Camino de Santiago, I had 5 weeks of experiences, almost 4.5 without my wife, but I share them with a lot of other people who are now my friends. And we all can remember that night we sat and had a meal together, or when we were walking by that church and this happened. So that's the other side. If you can, when you're traveling solo, you can also meet other people. And then there's some new friends you can remember those experiences with. Thanks everybody for coming. You were a great group. You gave me some more ideas to add to this class. I'm going to put those down, and please come back again. Any of you that are solo travelers, next time we hold this class, share your wisdom and ideas. They're really valuable. And maybe I'll see some of you in some of the other travel classes. I'm really enjoying doing these. And I hope to see you all another day. Have a good afternoon.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Good job.
Thank you. Great class.